this guest speaker was supposed to lead the staff through lessons on culturally responsive learning. Was supposed to happen this week, Thursday. But they decided to actually Google this guy and see what they could find, and they were not happy, or at least not happy with people complaining about what it is that they found. His name is Michael Abraham. He's based in Minneapolis. He is the proprietor of Abraham Education. And the title of his presentation was Engaging Muslim Students, What All Educators Should Know. And according to the course description, it's based on one of his books. It will, quote, explore the intersections of race, identity, and religion as it pertains to personal identity of Muslim students. Design a specific lesson or unit plan with the goal of practicing culturally relevant pedagogy with Muslim students, and be prepared to undertake further study of Islam and Muslim cultural background. Now, essentially, what this is he argues that Muslim students learn a little bit differently because of their experiences as Muslims. Some of that is to how they're taught at mosques when it comes to prayer. Some of it is just cultural differences. Someone from one culture might learn in a way that's different from someone from another culture. This stuff is pretty standard. Now, after the training was announced, some staff members at Auburn High School started to look into this guy's background, and they were shocked by some of his commentary. Now, what is curious about this is, based on at least what I've been able to find, he has enough to upset both sides of the ideological spectrum. Because on the one hand, he doesn't seem to like Israel all that much. But on the other hand, he also doesn't seem to like gender ideology all that much. And that's a big issue in schools right now. So they end up canceling on this guy. And according to a district spokesperson, she said, clearly we had not done enough vetting. Uh-huh. Really? You think? So I got a hold of him over the weekend in what was a very awkward conversation for my part. I felt the awkwardness. I'm a professional, so he probably did not. Because you know how on the Venn diagram, there's going to be some overlap with anti-Semites and conservatives? There's just an overlap. And sometimes an anti-Semite, I'm not accusing him of being an anti-Semite. However, he does traffic in some anti-Semitism in my view. But, you know, someone who you don't think is a good person might have good taste in music. And you're like, oh, man, we both like the same album from Jake Bugg. We both really are obsessed with his first album and didn't think his third album was all that good, too. It was okay, but it was always about number one.
It's like when you're in school and like there's that kid you hate, makes a funny joke, and you don't want to laugh.
Oh, I can't laugh at this. But my God, it was such a funny joke. It's one of those things. And the second I got on the phone with him, this is how it started off.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Have you been on the Tucker Carlson show before when he was on Fox News?
Turns out he's at least a fan of Tucker and was very familiar with my work as it relates to Chop or Chaz. That's how he knows who I am. And that probably lowered the tension a little bit because he knew why I was calling. And to me, it made it awkward because I was like, oh, God. I came into this with some preconceived notions, and now I'm going to have to either do a 180 or maybe look at it a bit differently. And it exposed my own potential bias, and I don't like that because I try to keep that at bay. But, of course, I'm a human. Bias shows up. So I had some mixed feelings about that. And I started off by simply asking him why he thought his presentation was canceled. He told me that the principal had called him and basically said to him what they said to me, which is that after learning about his online activities, there was a conflict in values, but didn't give anything specific. So I said, well, what do you think it is? Well, he believes it's tied to something that happened in Maryland with their school board that the Muslim community was very upset about, that he was involved in some advocacy around in support of the Muslim community, which was basically they got rid of a policy that said the parents can no longer, number one, get reading material for LGBT curriculum ahead of time. And number two, you can't pull your kid from the class if it's based on merely not wanting your kid to learn about the LGBT curricula. Now, that's something that conservatives would be upset with, just as this guy was upset with.
Of course, I'm anti-bullying. The Muslim community is anti-bullying. We're against bullying, and we respect the rights of any student to have a safe place in school, of course. But but Muslims have religious beliefs that that affect what they want for their kids, that affect classes that they may or may not want their kids in, and that's just a reality. And the other reality is parents have a right to that. It changes a little bit from state to state, but parents have a general right to direct the education upbringing of their child. So that's the only message that I give with it. And even when I was going to talk at Auburn, I don't bring this topic up in any of my trainings unless it's asked about. But if it is asked about, I don't lie about the Muslim community's general position on it, because I wouldn't be an authentic representative then if I did that.
Now, was there anything crazy about that? No. Would that upset a progressive staff member at Auburn High School? Yes, most definitely. I mean, he refers to this whole issue with language that traditionally a conservative would use. Extreme gender ideology is what he called it on his Facebook page. Now, I agree with him on this. And it was at this moment I was like, oh, maybe I got this guy wrong. Maybe he's not a controversial figure. But then, of course, there's a video that he posted on YouTube titled, "When Israel Fakes Muslim Terrorism, a History." And in this video, which is no longer up, it's no longer online since I wrote the story, it amplifies claims by this controversial author and activist named Naim Giladi, who basically argues that Jewish leaders in the 50s were purposefully putting Jews in dangerous positions or committing terrorism against them so that they would emigrate from the Arab world to Israel. That's the claim that this guy makes, and it's presented as if it's some sort of mainstream history. It is very clearly not. He's not in the mainstream at all. But then it gets into a conspiracy. Do you remember Abu Musab al-Zarqawi?
He was the head of ISIS, right?
He not the head of ISIS, but you're in the right world in that what he was doing led to the strategies and tactics that ISIS would end up utilizing. He is or was a Jordanian militant. He was the one who did not just the orchestration of suicide bombings, but also the beheadings, including of Nicholas Berg. So that's this guy. And he's most notorious for this, I think it was like a 25-minute video that he posted about his ideology, why he does what it is he does. And anyone who Googles him will know exactly who it is I'm talking about. Well, there is a conspiracy that Mossad or some other quote-unquote Western intelligence agency faked it all, that he wasn't a real terrorist, that it was all phony, either completely or he was duped into holding this position. And in the video, Michael Abraham goes through and compares his performance, al-Zarqawi's performance, to others who are in the world of espousing hate, and says it doesn't match up. He's reading, he's using his finger in one way, but real people who are like this, they don't use their finger that way. Like, it went into like this deep analysis of who he was. And it's just a big old conspiracy. And then he says this at the end of the video.
A legitimate reason to see things that happen or supposedly happen in the news, these attacks. We have every right to suspect that they are fake, and we don't have to apologize for them. And the other thing I worry about is after October 7th, you can see really clearly the Zionist propaganda just going crazy. And it's very interesting to me as someone who studied the Israeli-Palestinian conflict years ago, and you kind of study how lies would be put out, and sometimes it would take a generation for alternative information to get spread that would dispel those lies.
On his X account, he rejected the idea that Israel is the indigenous homeland for Jews. He questioned evidence showing a Hamas terrorist who celebrated the murder of Jews. He falsely put out there that claim that Israel bombed that Gazan hospital. That was quickly debunked. He was pushing that out. And of course, he accuses Israel of genocide, which is a talking point that's used by folks on the far left who don't like Jews or Israel. Now, I don't view him as someone on the far left, and I obviously don't know how he personally feels about Jews. He said that part of the video was more about him just pointing out why Muslims might view the world the way that they view them. It sounded like to me it was more definitive than, I'm just telling you why some people hold these. Didn't really sound that way. Usually when someone, upon learning that you're doing a story about them, start to delete tweets and then completely take offline their X account or Twitter account, usually a sign that you are right with your initial assessment that maybe some of the things he says is not kosher. It's all down now. I, of course, screenshot. And I was finding out in real time that he was deleting tweets that I was looking at because I just happened to have his X account or Twitter account up on my browser. And I hadn't really done much. I was just scrolling through it to see if anything immediately popped. And I saw a couple things here or there, but I wasn't putting that much time into it. So I go back to the browser, and it's, of course, all cached. So I have everything, and I'm hitting the direct tweet that I want to insert into my story as a link, and it's not there anymore. And so I had the image of everything that was up, so I was screenshotting, and he was deleting it it seemed like he was going through his own account to try to delete things that would be quote unquote controversial. Now, on the one hand, could you argue that maybe he feels bad about it? Sure. I don't think that's the case, but it's possible. And then this morning, his video was taken down from YouTube, which I already downloaded, and his entire account was taken offline. It says the account no longer exists. So I'm wondering if I missed a whole bunch of stuff because I didn't go further than, I think the latest I went was October 7th. I stopped at that point because I was tired. The school didn't vet this guy. The school was going to, and I think paid him something as a result of booking him and then canceling at the last minute. That's a type of incompetence that is unfortunately not all too rare when it comes to teachers and principals. That's a reality. Sorry, I don't want to think that of staff, but how many stories have we done in which the reasonable person, upon learning of the conduct, would say, well, that shows questionable judgment. Y'all didn't Google him at all? Not even a little bit? How is it that staff members complained? And the spokesperson for the district said staff members complained. And that's what caused them to review this guy. Why wasn't the review done early on? How do you just go ahead and invite someone you've not done your due diligence on to come to your school and influence your teachers? How do you skip that part?
Occam's razor would suggest incompetence, I think.
Incompetence. And I would argue, and I could even say maybe less incompetence as not really caring because he ticked a box that they wanted, right? That they wanted someone who can do culturally responsive learning for Muslim students. They say they've got an influx of Muslim students in the district lately, and they're doing it. I believe they're doing it for, with good intentions. But they just did the easiest thing. Oh, so, he was here before in Washington and some teacher recommended him, so I guess I'll book him. I won't even look at his Google results. I won't even look at his social media. That's just lazy. And if they're willing to do that with staff training, what do you think they're doing with your kids in the classroom? Do you think they're properly vetting all the material that isn't in a textbook? I mean, we've done a ton of stories out of Seattle that seems to show they either didn't vet or this is the crazy stuff that they actually believe. And this is just, yet again, a reminder for parents to be more involved with what's going on. And unfortunately, it can't just be, doing some of the research on your own for what's in front of your kid. But remember, this stuff is also getting in front of staff members. It's also getting in front of them. And then they use that in the classroom to indoctrinate your kids. And maybe in the end, maybe if he had done his presentation, there would have been no issues whatsoever. And he's keeping all the other stuff that he deleted from his X account from the training. Okay, I still don't want to pay someone with tax dollars. My tax dollars going into someone who holds these kinds of views.